The GP medium tent buzzed with the usual noise of a supply rotation. Pallet crates shifting, clipboards snapping, Marines calling out inventory numbers. Canvas walls flapped slightly in the desert wind, carrying the scent of dust, gun oil, and hot diesel. Inside, a handful of Marines lounged between tasks, joking, tossing MRE packets at each other, killing time like only deployed Marines can. Near the back of the tent, an old man worked quietly at a folding table, sorting medical supplies with slow, deliberate precision. He wasn't in uniform, just tan cargo pants, an old core t-shirt faded from too many washes, and a pair of boots that looked older than half the Marines in the tent. His posture was straight despite his age, movements steady, almost methodical. Nobody paid him much attention. Civilians rotated through all the time to help with logistics. But something about him felt different. Enter Lance Corporal Briggs, young, loud, and always performing for an audience. He spotted the old man and smirked. "Hey there, Pops," Briggs called out, swaggering over. "You used to be in the Corps or just dressed like it for fun?" A few Marines chuckled. The old man didn't look up. He continued folding gauze packs. Briggs grinned wider. "Come on, old-timer. What rank were you? Private? Lance Cooley like me?" The tent erupted in light laughter, good-natured but with an edge. Still, the old man stayed silent. Corporal Reyes, leaning against a crate, raised an eyebrow. "Briggs, leave him alone, man." But Briggs was enjoying himself. "Ah, relax, Corporal. I'm just asking. What were you, sir?" "Corporal. Maybe a sergeant if you're lucky?" For the first time the old man paused, only for a second. Then he went back to work, calm as still water. Something about that tiny pause made two Marines exchange glances. Not annoyance. Not fear. Something closer to warning. The young Marines couldn't place it, but the feeling lingered. This wasn't just an old volunteer. His silence carried weight, like a man who had seen too much to bother proving anything. And the tent, once buzzing with jokes, suddenly felt a little tighter, a little quieter. As if everyone sensed something was building. Briggs wasn't done. The young Marine circled the table like he was inspecting a new recruit. "Man, you're quiet. What's the matter? Forget your rank or just embarrassed to say it?" A couple of Marines snickered, but their laughs were quieter this time, more cautious. There was something about the old man's steady hands, the exact way he arranged every item, the precision. It wasn't the behavior of a random retiree or volunteer. It was muscle memory. Trained. Disciplined. Hard-earned. But Briggs didn't notice the shift. He saw an audience and kept performing. "So what's your story, old man?" Briggs pressed. "You just here for the free chow? Maybe you were supply too, counted beans for a living?" The old man didn't look up. He simply tied a medical pouch shut with a perfect, one smooth motion, not fast, professional, unmistakably Marine. Sergeant Miller saw it and frowned. "That's not how volunteers tie those," he muttered. Corporal Reyes shifted uneasily. "You sure you want to keep pushing him, Briggs?" Briggs waved them off. "Relax, he's cool. Right, old man? We're just having fun here." Still no response. But the silence wasn't helpless. It was intentional. Calculated. The kind of silence that made Marines straighten their backs without realizing it. Like being in the presence of someone whose authority didn't need to be spoken. Across the tent, PFC Lewis whispered, "Yo, look how he handles gear. My staff sergeant doesn't move that smooth." Another Marine added, "He knows the layout too. He reorganized the whole trauma kit without asking." Briggs pretended not to hear them. He leaned on the table, smirking down at the old man. "Come on, Pops. Just tell us your rank. We'll stop bothering you. Unless it was something tiny, like private first class." He laughed. "Or maybe you washed out?" This time the old man paused longer. He finished zipping a medical bag. Set it aside. Placed his hands flat on the table. Slow. Steady. Several Marines instinctively straightened. The young Lance Corporal felt the shift too, but he forced a grin to hide it. "Seriously," Briggs said, voice suddenly a bit weaker. "What were you?" "Corporal. Sergeant? Gunny?" The old man still didn't answer. But his silence now felt like a test. As if he was waiting to see how far the young Marine would go. Waiting to see who in the tent understood respect. And who didn't. The atmosphere tightened. The jokes died off. Every Marine was watching now. Something was building. Something none of them were prepared for. The old man's silence lingered in the tent, and for a moment, it felt like time itself slowed. Because behind that stillness, behind those steady hands and quiet eyes, was a history none of them could see. Flashback years earlier. The desert wasn't quiet back then. It roared. Incoming mortars screamed overhead as Marines sprinted across an outpost carved from the dust and heat of Iraq. Explosions punched the earth, throwing sand and shrapnel across the sky. A GP medium tent, the same kind now filled with supply jokes, shook violently as Marines dove inside for cover. At the center of it all stood Master Gunnery Sergeant Jonathan Iron Jack Hale. Tall. Unbreakable. A presence you didn't forget. He moved through chaos with terrifying calm, barking orders, dragging injured Marines to safety, positioning his squad with flawless precision. Corpsmen. To the rear wall. Mortar patterns adjusting. Move your asses. Keep the perimeter tight. His voice carried authority forged through decades of war. A young Marine, bleeding and terrified, looked up at him and whispered, "Master Guns, how are you so calm?" Iron Jack only replied, "Because panic doesn't save Marines. Discipline does." Minutes later, another mortar round hit the far end of the outpost, collapsing a section of the wall. Iron Jack didn't hesitate. He grabbed 2 Marines, shielded them with his own body, and pulled them out just as the tent nearly came down. Another flash, Afghanistan years later. Night combat. A valley lit by tracer rounds. A squad pinned down under machine gun fire. Master Guns Hale crawled forward alone, marking targets with infrared for an incoming airstrike while enemy bullets shredded the rocks around him. He never flinched. Never cursed. Never stopped. Some called him crazy. Most called him a legend. All called him Master Guns. His scar, visible even now, came from shielding a young corporal during an ambush on Route Michigan. His nickname, Iron Jack, came from the time he marched 3 miles with shrapnel in his leg to get his squad out alive. And through it all, he carried himself with the same silent discipline he showed now in the tent. Back to present, inside the GP tent. The old man, Iron Jack, finished securing the med bag with the same perfect knot he used during 2 wars. None of the Marines around him knew that he had once led entire companies. That he had stood in sandstorms of bullets. That he had saved men who later retired as officers. To them he was just an old volunteer. But beneath the weathered shirt and quiet posture was a history written in battle scars, folded flags, and the ghosts of Marines he'd carried home. And every second Briggs kept teasing him, every joke, every push, was dragging the tent closer to a moment none of them were ready for. A reckoning was coming. The GP tent felt tighter now, not physically but in atmosphere. The air had weight, like everyone was holding a breath they didn't realize they'd taken. Briggs, still leaning on the table, tried to restart the laughter. But his voice cracked just slightly. "So, still not answering, huh?" He forced a grin. "Come on, old-timer. It's a simple question. What rank were you?" The old man didn't move. He wasn't ignoring him. He was thinking. Choosing. As if weighing whether this moment even deserved a response. That unsettled the Marines more than any angry reaction could have. Corporal Reyes stepped forward. "Briggs, seriously? Stop." But Briggs had come too far, backed himself into a corner of pride. He puffed his chest and laughed louder than needed, overcompensating. "What? I'm just messing with him. You guys act like he's..." The old man finally raised his head. Every sound in the tent faded. No crate shifting, no inventory calling, no jokes. Just silence. His eyes were sharp, sharper than any of them expected. Sea gray, tired, but alert. Like a man who had spent his life reading danger in half seconds. He didn't say anything yet. But that look alone made Briggs take half a step back. Sergeant Miller whispered under his breath. "Oh hell, that's not a volunteer." The old man stood slowly, bones stiff but posture straight as a rifle barrel. Every Marine subconsciously aligned their stance. Briggs swallowed. He tried to put the smirk back on but it looked shaky now. So, he said, voice suddenly small, "You gonna answer me? What rank were you?" The old man adjusted the cuff of his faded Marine Corps shirt. The motion was deliberate, ritualistic. Then he stepped toward Briggs, boots clicking softly on the tent floor. 1 step. 2. The young Marine held his breath. Finally the old man spoke, not loud, not angry, just controlled, steady, and heavy with something the younger Marines didn't recognize until too late. "Authority." "Son," he said, voice carrying like a slow-moving storm, "you're asking the wrong question." Briggs blinked. The wrong question? The old man's gaze didn't break. "It's not what rank I was," he said quietly. "It's what rank I carried, for 31 years. A chill slid through the tent. Every Marine in the room straightened without being told to. Something was about to break open. And the arrival of command was seconds away. The tent was so quiet, even the hum of the generators outside felt loud. Briggs stood frozen, unsure whether to apologize or pretend he wasn't terrified. The old man didn't look angry, just disappointed. And that carried more weight than any yelling ever could. Before anyone could speak, the tent flap blasted open as a voice boomed. "Make a hole." Boots thundered inside. A first sergeant strode in first, followed by a captain and 2 supply NCOs. Clearly, someone outside had heard the tension, or the silence, because this wasn't a casual walkthrough. This was command responding to something they didn't fully understand yet. Every Marine snapped to attention. Briggs nearly tripped over his own boots trying to stand straight. First Sergeant Decker scanned the room. "What's going on in here? Why is this tent quieter than a prayer meeting?" His eyes fell on the old man, and the shift was instant. The first sergeant, gruff, built like a tank, feared by half the company, froze mid-step. Then, unbelievably, his posture straightened even more. "Sir?" he said quietly. "No, respectfully. Reverently." Briggs blinked. "Sir?" Captain Rowland stepped in behind him, confused at first, until he too saw the old man. His jaw tightened. He removed his cover out of instinct. "Master Gunnery Sergeant Hale?" he breathed, almost shocked. "I didn't know you were on base again." A ripple went through the tent. Master Gunnery Sergeant. The highest enlisted rank in the Marine Corps. A living legend even officers acknowledged. Briggs felt his soul leave his body. Reyes elbowed him so hard his ribs popped. "Told you to stop, idiot." But the captain wasn't done. He stepped forward, nodding at Hale. "Word is you saved more Marines than some battalions. Sir, if you'd told us you were volunteering in this sector, we would have assigned support personnel." The old man shrugged calmly. "Didn't need it. Marines here are doing fine." Briggs stared at the floor, face burning. He whispered, voice cracking, "Master Guns? I'm sorry. I didn't know." The first sergeant shot him a look that could melt steel. "You don't joke with a Master Gunnery Sergeant, Lance Corporal. You stand up, shut up, and learn something." Hale raised a hand gently, stopping the reprimand. "It's all right," he said. "He's young. Marines learn by fire." His voice wasn't angry, it held neither ego nor bitterness. Just experience. And that, more than anything, silenced the entire GP tent. For the first time, Briggs understood what real authority looked like. Not loud. Not arrogant. The tension inside the GP tent slowly shifted. No longer sharp, no longer hostile. Now it felt reverent. Like everyone had just realized they were standing in the presence of someone carved from the history books, not a dusty old volunteer. Master Gunnery Sergeant Hale, Iron Jack, looked around the tent with the calmness of a man who had seen worse days, harsher environments, and louder explosions than anything this deployment could offer. Captain Rowland cleared his throat. "Marines," he said, "if you don't know the name Jonathan Hale, you should. Men like him built the backbone of the Corps you stand in." He nodded toward the old man. "This Marine fought in more combat zones than anyone in this room. He trained NCOs who trained your NCOs." A wave of awe rolled through the tent. Sergeant Miller whispered, "That's the guy from the Battleground Ridge stories?" PFC Lewis nearly choked. "Master Guns Hale? I thought he retired years ago." Briggs stood stiff, ashamed, unable to lift his eyes. Captain Rowland continued, "He's earned every stripe, every scar, every ounce of respect this uniform holds." Then he looked directly at Briggs. "And he sure as hell doesn't owe anyone an explanation." Briggs swallowed hard. "Sir, Master Guns, I really didn't know. I was just..." Hale raised a finger gently. "Lance Corporal," he said, "joking is fine. Marines rib each other. It's part of the culture." Briggs nodded quickly, relief flickering for a second. "But," Hale continued, voice deepening, "there's a line between teasing and forgetting the traditions you swore to uphold." The tent stilled again. Hale stepped closer to the young Marine, not intimidating, just present. A force of calm authority. "You asked me my rank," he said softly. "And that's fair. But rank doesn't define a Marine. Actions do." Briggs stared at him, listening like his life depended on it. "Out there," Hale nodded toward the desert beyond the tent, "your rank won't save your brothers. Your attitude will. Your discipline will. Your respect will." He placed a steady hand on Briggs' shoulder, a gesture that meant more than any punishment. "Remember this, son. Never measure a Marine by their age, their clothes, or how quietly they stand. Some of the loudest stories are carried by the quietest men." The young Marine's eyes shifted with something new, understanding. Captain Rowland folded his arms, satisfied. That's your lesson for today, Lance Corporal? And one you won't forget. Briggs nodded hard. No, sir. I won't. Ever. As the weight of those words settled, the entire GP tent, every Lance Corporal, every NCO, even the captain, stood a little straighter, a little prouder. Because now they knew whose presence they were in. And they understood the kind of Marine they should strive to become. The tension had softened into something else entirely, respect, gratitude, and a lingering sense of awe. Master Gunnery Sergeant Hale, Iron Jack, gave the tent one last look. Not judging, not disappointed, just quietly proud. He picked up the medical bag he'd finished organizing. "Carry on, Marines," he said simply. And with that he moved toward the exit. No ceremony. No salute. No spotlight. Just a Marine doing what Marines do, serving quietly without asking for anything in return. Every Marine in the tent stepped aside instinctively as he passed, creating a hallway of reverence. Even the captain straightened as Hale walked by. Briggs stood stiff, eyes forward, heels locked. Hale paused beside him for just a moment. "You'll be fine, Lance Corporal," he murmured. "Just remember what the Corps is built on." Briggs nodded, voice barely steady. "Yes, Master Guns." Hale touched the brim of his faded cover, then stepped out into the desert sun. The tent flap fell closed behind him with a soft whump, a sound that somehow felt final. For a few seconds no one moved. Then Sergeant Miller exhaled. "Well, Hal. That's one for the books." PFC Lewis shook his head in disbelief. "I can't believe that was the Iron Jack. In our tent. Just folding supplies." Corporal Reyes smirked. "That's what legends do. They don't brag. They just work." Captain Rowland turned to the first sergeant. "Make sure Ops knows he's volunteering here. And get a team together, he shouldn't be lifting crates alone." "Aye, sir." But the captain wasn't done. He pointed to the back of the tent, the table where Hale had been working. "That spot stays his," Rowland said. "And we're putting up a plaque. Today." And they did. By sundown the GP tent's back wall held a simple metal frame. Master Gunnery Sergeant Jonathan Iron Jack Hale, USMC. Service beyond retirement. Valor beyond measure. Over the next days and weeks, the story spread like wildfire across the base. Young Marines repeated it with wide eyes. Older Marines nodded knowingly. Even the hardened NCOs retold it as a reminder. Respect isn't given, it's earned. And some Marines earn it forever. Briggs never forgot the moment the tent went silent. The moment he learned what a real Marine looked like. And at the end of the video the narrator closes with, "Like, share and subscribe for more Marine Valor stories."